I'm going to turn this off for a second so we can just say hi to some of the people who are on the screens. Special shout out. Nice to see you, Roz and Dawn. And glad Scott Whittle, I think we just had you join on the phone. Who else is on the phone that I can't see?
Hi, it's Nancy.
Nancy. Okay, so let's move on and do introductions of guests who are here today. Who would like to start? You'll have to raise your hand potentially.
You have to unmute yourself.
Well, I'm going to start then if nobody's going to. I'd like to welcome my son Luke. He's off. Oh no, you just took yourself off mic. Luke, thanks for joining us today. I know you're super busy with Zoom school.
Yeah, no problem.
Your own. And I'm super proud of you because I want to share that Luke is graduating 8th grade and entering high school. And he is officially registered for a college class this summer before he's even registered for high school classes. So blows my mind. But anyways, welcome, and I hope you enjoy our speaker today. We have other guests. Who else would like to introduce? Kurt, do you want to take yourself off mute and introduce?
I think our speaker should introduce her.
You mean?
Oh, Kurt, you should introduce Doug.
You introduce.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I do have a brother on the show here. My brother Doug Smith is a reporter for the Times, and he's going to be introducing the speaker.
Welcome, Doug. We're excited to have you. And then Elena,
Thank you.
Are you a Rotaractor? Are you a guest?
Elena is a guest. She's going to be one of our speakers today. Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Heber with LA Times High School Insider. And Elena is one of our interns from this past semester. And so she'll be talking about some of the work she's been doing and a really incredible story she's been pursuing while with the Times.
Fantastic. Well, we'll look forward to your formal introduction and hearing a little bit more, and we're excited for your program. Anyone else? I'm looking. All right, we're gonna move on then, and I will go back to sharing my screen if I can figure this out. Okay. Do we have any announcements? I think I know we have, Marcia has one.
Well, I just got a good news announcement. Some of you know my my friend Lisa Weiss, and she's got her grandmother is 106 and just recovered from the virus, had the virus back in the East Coast and just recovered. And she has a picture, she's standing of her walking down a hallway with a whole bunch of rigs and everything on her in the hospital. But that's pretty amazing. 106 to start, let's just start there, got the virus and has recovered. So that's my good news for today.
That is great news. I mean, the age isn't impressive to these Rotarians. We all know 106 is like a drop in the bucket for this club, but fantastic and glad she's doing well. Anybody else?
I do.
Yay.
So it's Brian Whitney, and as far as speakers, I got Eugene Volek. If you remember him, he's a constitutional scholar up at UCLA, a law professor. He spoke to us about the Second Amendment, and I thought COVID-related issues would be interesting. There's so many different things. I mean, does the government have the right to make you? Should the government have a right to make you get a vaccination? Or there's been lots of things as far as speech issues. If you have any particular thing that you would like Dr. Volek to talk about, please forward that to me, and we'll build this talk. He doesn't have anything prepared, but I think it could be a really interesting talk.
Thank you, Brian. And you've brought us so many great programs this year. So I really appreciate all your effort and this UCLA professor as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
When is he speaking, Brian?
It's in June. I just noticed I didn't have them on the calendar yet, but it's one of the 2 dates at the end.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And I just wanted to note that William Wishard had just joined us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be at your meeting again.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to put you back on mute though. Okay.
All right, no problem.
Okay.
Good to see you, Bill. All right,
Thank
does
you.
anybody else have anything they want to share? Quiet bunch today. I love this muting feature. We're gonna have to figure this out in real life when we go back to club meetings here.
I one thing, I did find out that, you guys probably all know this too, the whole UC system is not actually going to start up again for the fall. Did you guys, for those of you who didn't get the email, literally, so I doubt the faculty center is going to start up if UCLA doesn't start up. So just thought I'd throw that out there for food for thought. I'm done. Okay.
All right, any district news, Diane or Mark, that you'd like to share?
Nope, I don't. Well, let me just say this. Next Wednesday night at 6 p.m., they're going to be giving out the awards for the pageant of the arts. We had contestants in every category. I don't know if they won. I am planning to attend, but you will get a Zoom invitation from districts sometime maybe this weekend.
Okay, thanks. Phil? Hi, Phil.
Can I just tag on to what Marcia just said? There hasn't been an official determination. The chancellor, Janet Napolitano, whatever her last name is, they have made a decision whether they might do a hybrid of students coming back, which would be a combination of online and some people coming back for in-class learning. So we don't really know exactly what's happening for the fall yet. It hasn't been determined.
Okay,
By the way, she's the president.
of the UCs, yes, of all the UCs. Mark, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I put it in a chat to everybody, but I'll mention it now. Nancy and I were going to try this today, but Nancy got caught up in her office. But for any Rotarians that want to attend these Zoom meetings, but only like you, Scott, in particular, that attend every week, but don't have access to a camera, okay? Over here at Compass, they have these big conference rooms and a big screen TV, and it's large enough so that we can all be social distanced around this conference table and watch the whole thing on a big screen. And if anybody wants to do that, let me know, and I'll arrange for us to join each other here on a Thursday.
Thank you. And just so you know, you guys, if you move your mouse to the top of the black box, you can have a view where you can see currently 20 people, or at least 20 boxes. So you can sometimes see more participants. Okay.
We just got a memo regarding UCLA opening, and what it said was they may open some science, primarily labs where studies are going to be being done, and traditional studies as well, but that would be the part of UCLA that opens.
All right, good stuff. Well, if we don't have any other announcements, without further ado, I think today's going to be a great program, and I want to leave time for Q&A and just chatting with our friends afterwards if there is time. So I'd like to thank Doug Curtis for joining us today. Doug Smith. Thank you, Curtis, for having your brother introduce our speaker. And Doug, I think you have the formal, so I'll give you the floor.
Great. So I'm introducing Molly Heber, who is the lead of the LA Times High School Insider Project. And that's a project that I really like. I, as a very senior reporter at the LA Times, I've seen a lot of our community engagement programs come and go. And this is one that I just really like because it it engages a part of the community that's really important to us, which is young people who have an interest in journalism and public affairs. And it brings them into the newspaper, it gets them in contact with us, with the old reporters like me, and brings us in contact with some of the young new spirit. And so I've just taken a real liking to the program, which Molly inherited. I've been involved in it even before Molly was at the LA Times, but I'm so glad she's here. So just a little biographical detail. Before coming to the LA Times, Molly worked at the Los Angeles Educational Partnership and Exploring the Arts, Inc. to ensure greater access to college and career readiness supports and the arts in LAUSD schools. That's LA Unified School District schools. She has a bachelor's from University of California at Davis and a master's in education from Harvard Graduate School of Education. She loves to travel, but she's all about California. She lived in Northern California and Southern California throughout her life. So she's going to introduce Elena Marine, I think, but I'll just say Elena is a senior at Da Vinci Communication School in El Segundo, and she's a staff reporter for the school publication, the Vitruvian Post. And I'm really glad that high schools still have newspapers and that Elena is a part of that. She's loved writing since she was a little girl and was excited to join her school's journalism pathway to continue to improve her writing. She enjoys writing feature stories that capture all of the little details of people and places that help tell a larger story, and her dream is to one day publish a novel. And I'd say that Elena is also a very gracious person. Molly put her on the phone with me once to pontificate about journalism, and she listened to me for an hour and said everything I said was really great. So, so I think she's a really promising young journalist. And I hope before she writes that novel, she writes lots and lots of stories for newspapers.
Someday
So I guess
her
with
on a
that,
dust
Molly,
jacket.
you've got the floor.
Thank you so much. Yes, I look forward to the day that I see Elena's face on a dust jacket, but in the meantime, I hope to see lots of bylines. Thank you so much for everyone for inviting our program to your club. Thank you to Doug and Kurt, who've been huge supporters of the program, like they said, for years now. I've also had the pleasure, this is my second time returning to the Westwood Village Rotary to share with you about my program. So I'm really excited to kind of give you a refresh on what High School Insider is all about, but also share with you all some of the new creative opportunities that we are working on to help engage young people, make sure that their voices are represented in media, but also give them the opportunity to be the creators of the first draft of history. So thank you so much. I do have a little presentation that can help guide the conversation. So I'll share my screen with you now. All right. So first things first, I don't have to tell you all that we are living through unprecedented times, a new normal, all of those things. But it is really an unprecedented time for our students. As of mid-March, when California shut down all of our schools, 6.1 million students have had their education disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic. 6.1 million students across California have had their education disrupted. But the bright spot within that is the student journalists who are taking this opportunity, treating it like true journalists, are taking this as an opportunity to really continue to tell their stories, and are not letting anything get in their path to share news, share what's going on in their schools, their communities, their neighborhoods, and what's going on in their own lives.
Excuse me, Molly.
Yes.
Everybody's muted except for you. I just unmuted myself. But there's some sort of feedback coming back on your mic. I don't know if you moved something. It started almost when you started speaking. Unless I'm the only one hearing it. Did anybody else, you can nod your head, that was hearing it?
No, we're hearing it too.
Okay.
I wonder if this helps at all. Taking my headphones out.
Did you take the headphone thing out?
I did. I can unplug my laptop, see if that helps at all. No?
It's so weird. It just has some sort of feedback when you, right when you talk. If you sit there quiet, there's no feedback on of anything.
I wonder if I can call in on my phone instead.
I'm not that big of a Zoom person to know if that would help at all, but
I'm sorry about that. I'm not really sure what the issue is.
Just double checking. Everybody's on mute.
Sure. I can go ahead and try and call in. I'll keep going, but try and switch to this when I.
All right. Oh.
Yeah.
Molly, you might be talking too close to the microphone because it's a little bit of feedback.
Is this better? If I sit farther away? That's better? Okay, excellent. Perfect, thank you so much. All right. So as I was saying, you know, student journalists are kind of the bright spot in amidst all of the kind of chaos that the coronavirus has thrown our school system into. These kids are really taking this opportunity to really live the ethos of journalists and continue to tell the story, know how important it is for their voices, their stories to be represented. High School Insider is really just a vessel, a pathway, an opportunity for students to share their story, to amplify their voices. So we are always trying to find ways to ensure that these students are both included in media and are given the chance to really tell their story themselves. We've done, in the past couple of months, High School Insider has connected students to the LA Times in kind of new and innovative ways to make sure that students are really getting their questions answered. There's a lot of kind of confusion, and as we can hear from UCLA, like we don't know when things are kind of coming back to normal. And so students have lots of questions about their futures, about their educations, about their friends and family. So it's part of my job to help make sure that they get those answers. High School Insider provides free 1-year digital subscriptions to students so that they have access to all of the news that they need, regardless of whether or not they have the financial means to get that information. We have been creative in working with our education desk to make sure that students are connected to journalists and are able to voice their questions, their concerns. We have conducted, for example, a listening session where students from 40 different LAUSD schools were able to talk to an education reporter and just ask, you know, the questions that were on their minds. Will online school affect the credits I need to graduate this spring? Will colleges be more understanding if my grades are lower this semester? If one of my family members gets infected, what will happen? What supports are there for low income or undocumented families whose members get sick? These are the kinds of questions that just came out of students' mouths and get to go straight to a journalist's ears so that they can do the reporting necessary to answer the real world questions that students have and need to be able to go out and continue to build their lives. It hasn't all been as serious, you know. This is a really traumatic time for students, so we also try and find ways for students to, you know, still be creative and fun and see the joy out in the world. We partnered with our lifestyle desk to put on a virtual prom where high school students could send in their, their photos like dressed to the nines. And our team at the LA Times would digitally edit students into like groups with their friends in front of cheesy like prom backgrounds, so that they could still have like that keepsake from prom, even though, proms have been canceled across the state. Again, High School Insider's job is in part just creating these opportunities for the LA Times to connect with the broader community of young people in Los Angeles. And those are some of the ways that we've been able to do it. Beyond that, High School Insider is still continuing the work that we've been doing since November 2014. We are a community of young readers, thinkers, and storytellers where we try and amplify and develop student voices on issues that matter. This might be a little bit of a callback to last year when I visited the club, but our program is structured at kind of 3 tiers. We try and engage with students from a young age, engage them with media, with writing. We create opportunities for them to enrich themselves and grow, connect with other students, and then specifically students who really want to pursue a career in writing and journalism and media. Elena is an example of that kind of top tier of student, but we cast a really wide net. High School Insider works with over 350 schools across, mostly based in Southern California, but really sprinkled throughout the country and around the world. We currently have about 2,500 student writers who contribute to our website, and we run dozens of events throughout the year and opportunities for students to connect with one another, meet journalists and learn from them, and grow as the next generation of reporters. At the foundation of High School Insider is our user-generated content platform. UGC is kind of like, it's like, think of YouTube or Medium or Instagram. The idea is that students get to publish their stories and ensure that their pieces reach a wider audience. Lots of our students are writing for their student publications, but those are tended to be targeted towards just the school campus. Maybe they're distributed as like a packet. Some student publications like rarely get to have like a real printed product for students to have and to hold. And they rarely ever get a bigger audience beyond just the boundaries of the school and maybe some select parents and community members. But High School Insider serves this really essential function for student journalists to help them, help their stories kind of break those boundaries so that they can share their perspectives with students across the country. We've actually, over the last couple of months, had record-breaking traffic to our website. I think we've had 20% to 30% higher traffic to our website for the past 2 months over a previous record. I think students are really seeing this as an important time for them to read quality coronavirus coverage, but also hear about, they're also interested to hear how other schools and school districts around the nation are handling this time. And High School Insider creates this hub where kids can read each other's stories and learn from each other that way. In the before times, we had lots of different events kind of around that rotated throughout Los Angeles to bring students together. We are now converting all of these to kind of online opportunities. Next weekend, we're having our quarterly meetup event where student journalists can Zoom in and get to meet a handful of some of the kind of young reporters from the LA Times who have been covering coronavirus, covering education, and they get to talk about how coronavirus has impacted their college decision making. This will be this is one of our opportunities that we hold multiple times a year because we love to bring kids together to talk to each other about, what are the real issues impacting their day-to-day lives, and introduce them to journalists where they can see how media organizations like the LA Times are covering those issues. Every year we also have a fall journalism conference, and we conduct school visits. Those are going to be converted to online programs. We've just launched a kind of a weekly standing meeting where high school students, any high school insider can call in and get feedback on stories that they're working on, or learn more about High School Insider, or just come and talk to other students who are passionate about journalism. Again, a big priority for us is making sure that students are not just connected to the Times, but connected with each other, because we know that if we want them to be supported down the road as they are pursuing whatever their journalism careers, they need to be connected with other peers of their own age to help them kind of navigate these career paths. Lastly, we have our opportunities for professional development. One of our biggest projects is our student advisory board, where we recruit 15 to 20 students every semester, again, from around the country, who help give shape to the High School Insider program. They, tell us what students really want to talk about, what do they want to cover, what reporters do they want to learn from, what are the skills that they wish they knew so that they could bring back to their student publications on their campuses. These young leaders are examples to the rest of High School Insider of what it looks like to be a strong student journalist and an advocate for youth voice in media. Then we have our interns. Every summer, we've recruited between like 7 to 10 high school students to come and actually work at the LA Times for 6 weeks. They pursue a feature enterprise story that they've pitched themselves. A feature enterprise story tends to be kind of a longer form narrative story that wouldn't exactly be breaking news, but really these stories are written are supported by Kurt and Doug Smith and the Jack Smith Fund. We try and encourage students to write stories in the narrative style of longtime LA Times columnist Jack Smith. He had such an incredible way of taking very small details of day-to-day life in Los Angeles and using them as a lens to see new perspectives on the broader LA community. So these feature enterprise stories that these students pursue are an opportunity for them to really explore Los Angeles in new ways, but also to tell stories about little known parts of our community that really all readers would benefit from learning about. Elena is really a true example of this type of narrative story writing. She, again, because I think she gets it from me wanting to be a novelist someday, she's a master of capturing the details and really creating a picture, a scene that really draws the reader in and helps them really imagine themselves in the story that she is pursuing. So with that, I'd love for Elena to unmute and just a little bit about the story that she's pursuing. Hi, Elena, can you hear me?
Hey.
Hello, hello. All right, Elena, thank you so much for taking the time out of your school day to chat with us. Before we dive into the feature story that you've been writing this semester, let me ask a little bit about you. Can you maybe introduce yourself and tell us how you got interested in writing, how you got interested in journalism.
Hey, I'm Elena Marin. I'm a senior at Da Vinci Communications School at El Segundo. I write for my student publication, The Vitruvian Post. I loved writing since I was in middle school. I love stories. I was excited to join my journalism class in order to improve my writing skills. I like feature stories. They capture details of people and places, and they tell a whole larger story. And yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tell us about what got you kind of interested in writing. You said you've been interested since you were really young. Do you remember what it was that drew you into this?
Well, everyone starts out writing with little things. Like when I was little, I loved writing picture books for my parents, and then it started turning into whole blown out stories. I remember in middle school, my 8th grade teacher encouraged me into writing, doing a word count by the end of the month. I would write a specific amount of words by the end of the month as a challenge. And I started liking the idea of, challenging myself with my writing and stuff like that.
Ooh, all right, all right. So tell us about the story that you've been pursuing this semester. Can you give us a taste of the project that you've been working on?
So past semester, since January, I've been reporting at the Hospitality Kitchen on Skid Row. This is a group of volunteers who come together to serve meals to Skid Row's homeless about 3 days a week. And it's a group of wonderful individuals who want to give to their community in any way they can, whether it's full meals, food, hygiene, and things like that.
Where did you get this idea for your story?
Well, last semester in December, I had to get together my required volunteer hours, and something led me to this hospitality kitchen. And I got to know everyone. They were all good people, and they seemed very interesting. I never knew about them before that day. And I thought, hey, this is a good article idea. So I decided to pursue it later on, and it turned into a whole project.
So you started pursuing this story in like January, February, so in the before times. How did you get started on this piece? Like what does it take for a student journalist to start a feature story covering their community like this?
First, I just got to know people. There are many interesting individuals at the Hospitality Kitchen. There are still volunteers who were there since the beginning in the 1970s who still come by to see the people there and help out. And there are new people who love to help others, doing everything they can. So it was great getting to know them and as people and as my interviewees, and just getting all the details together about what this kitchen is like as a whole, what kind of atmosphere they give out to their guests and things like that. It's how I started the whole process.
So then some challenges arose for both you as a journalist and the organization. Can you tell us about what it was like kind of transitioning from traditional shoe leather reporting where you're out talking in person, face to face, getting a sense of the space, and what it was like to transition away from that to pursuing a story from home?
It was very difficult at first because in the first 3 months of reporting, I would simply go there every Saturday, and take as many pictures as I can and get interviews with as many people as possible. And it was very easy because it was everybody packed in one place. I didn't have to do any interviews outside of school. I mean, outside of the kitchen, and I didn't have to schedule anything outside of there. So I didn't have any problems then. But of course, then the whole crisis started, and I didn't have anyone's contact information because I didn't process, hey, maybe I should have planned this a little more further. Like, what if something happened to one of the volunteers and I couldn't like contact them anymore? So that was a mistake on my part. Luckily, I found their website and their contact information, and I was able to call the kitchen and get an interview with one of the volunteers who was in charge. As you can see in the first picture, there's a man there talking to someone. His name is Matt. I got an interview with him, and I was able to get an update on how the kitchen was progressing during the coronavirus, some adjustments that they had to do due to the coronavirus and things like that. So I can incorporate it in my story.
So what are some of the changes that the Hippie Kitchen has had to make right now?
Well, at the beginning, they simply closed off any volunteers around mid-March. They already got together to discuss what would happen if the coronavirus had already got blown out. They were very prepared. So at first, they stopped letting any new volunteers come by. And as the weeks dropped by, then they started letting some volunteers come by. For example, you would have to not have left, you couldn't have been in the airport, have conjured any like sicknesses from the last 2 weeks, or, you know, basically doing what you can with the social distancing. If you're young and healthy, then you're free to go. And they would accept those volunteers, as well as if you volunteered there before, because they take safety measures very seriously there. They take health measures very seriously. So they would appreciate it if people that they already know and trust would come by and help. And since they are a kitchen, they follow guidelines like restaurants during this crisis as well. So they only do to-go orders now. At the entrance, outside the entrance, they have tables where they serve food. They make sure that they have the line going. Not a lot of conversations with the guests like they used to, but I mean, it has to happen anyways. They're giving out water and hygiene kits like they used to. So there's just a little more distance involved now. They closed the garden where they have dining. So you can't exactly dine over there in the kitchen anymore. So things have changed a lot, but they're going through it tremendously well.
Yeah. All right. What would you say is the most like memorable moment or interaction you had while you were covering the Hippie Kitchen?
I feel like the most memorable moment was when they were serving food a couple months ago, and I remember there's these food carts that have all these fresh vegetables and loaves of bread that are free for grabs for any of the guests to come by. And this one man, he has an apartment building that all of his neighbors are elders, and he goes to the Hippie Kitchen to get them meals and you know, fresh produce and stuff like that. And there were so many on display, and he was so happy. He was full out grinning, and he kept saying it's Christmas, and he was very kind with the workers, very happy and very grateful. And it really stuck with me how appreciative guests are when they come by, when they say thank you. It's really heartfelt, and I guess that's what captured me the most.
why do you feel like this story is so important for high school insiders to read, or really for anyone to read?
I feel like this story is very important to people out there because the power of giving is very powerful. You know, just giving to others and being selfless and just, you know, providing for people who really need it. It's really important, especially in these times where it's more difficult to be there, like face to face. They have to be at a certain distance with their guests. They don't like interact with them as much as they did before. And I know that, you know, they're very close to their guests and they really love them as well. And they're still trying to do everything they can to help. They're giving them meals and food and, you know, medical. They have mail that the guests have this location where they send mail to the kitchen and they get their mail there. So they're doing everything they can to provide for the guests. So despite the hard times, and I feel like it's very important that everyone knows about this kind of thing.
Thank you so much for pursuing this story, telling this really important, talking about this really important service out in the community. And thank you for persevering through even your own challenges and reporting the piece. I think I agree with you. This is a really important story for people to be able to read. I have one last question for you, and then I want to be able to open up questions to everyone in Rotary. So I guess my last question to you is, reflecting on this project, how do you feel like you've grown as a writer or as a photographer or as a student or whatever, however you want to define it? How do you feel like you've grown throughout this project?
I feel like as a writer, I've grown in how I incorporate details in my story. Because before working on this project, I would kind of go overboard on the details because I like putting every little thing inside the story, and it was kind of unnecessary in some ways. Like some details didn't need to be in the story, and I feel like since I've gotten this internship, I've been able to see what details really matter in the story and things like that. And as a photographer, if you asked me a year ago how important a photo would be in a story, I wouldn't know how to answer because I didn't know how important photos were. But now I think that photos can say more than words can sometimes. Like, for example, it captures the atmosphere a little bit better, like how helpful people can be, the conversations that how they're having, like the jokes, how they're laughing and stuff like that. I feel like it tells its own story and that they're important too, the photos.
Thank you so much. All right, I'll stop sharing my screen and open up the floor to questions from anybody.
I have a question.
Yes, Doug.
So I heard the word hippie kitchen slide in a couple of times. I assume that's the common name as opposed to the formal name. Where does the hippie kitchen name come from?
Well, the hippie kitchen name sort of comes from you know how like the term hippie like comes from how like peaceful people are. And I feel like the guests started branding the hospitality kitchen with that name due to that. And since then, it's become a very common name for how they refer to the hospitality kitchen. It's basically its street name, and it's what they use to define their community now, I'd say.
Remember, you have to take yourself off mute if you wanted to ask a question.
Well, I'll ask another question. Where is the hospitality kitchen?
It's down in Skid Row. Do you
And
need like a specific address?
do people just sort of walk in off the street to there, or where do the clients come from?
You mean the guests?
The guests.
The guests are practically the homeless population in Skid Row. The hospitality kitchen is open from 9:30 to I think maybe 12:30 is when they close up, and all sorts of guests trickle in. It doesn't matter whether you have to know the volunteers or not. You can come in to get a meal, whoever you are. They'll welcome anybody and spread their hospitality. All they want to do is serve meals. As for volunteers, they used to allow anyone to go in. Yeah.
Do you know how many people they serve? Is it 7 days a week, just certain hours?
3 days a week.
They serve Tuesdays, Thursdays, and I believe Saturdays from 9:30 to 12:30. The hours haven't changed since pandemic struck, so.
Elena, must be a good feeling to know that the work that you put into it, which is considerable, has such a strong effect on so many people. I mean, you really make a lot of lives better.
I wouldn't say that I would make lives better, but it's a start to spreading the word and how people can start helping others in small ways.
It's a big start. It's a big step at a really important time. Thank you for that.
And how do they fund the activity?
Fund?
Where's the money come from?
Well, the Hippie Kitchen they get donations from basically anybody. They're kind of limiting their donations now because they don't want anything to be hazardous to, their guests, like any hazardous or problematic foods. But they get their donations from practically anybody. They're funded by individual private donations, and they're not a nonprofit corporation.
Elena, can you explain why it's so interesting or unique that this particular organization, why did they decide, how are they not a nonprofit organization?
Well, they're not a nonprofit organization because they had a policy instituted by the community's founders. They were Christians, and they thought that Christians should not expect rewards from the government for fulfilling Christians' obligation. So they're not a nonprofit organization. They're just funded exclusively by people's private donations.
But they can't expect a tax break because of their donation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long have they been in existence?
Since 1970, I believe. This specific location of the kitchen.
I'm sorry, did I already ask, do you know what's the volume? I think I asked the days, but do you know approximately how many people go through a day or a week there? Or a year?
I wouldn't know how many people go through. It kind of depends on, how do you say, the time of month. For example, less people come by the end of the month due to, how do I say it, not getting any money. But at the beginning of the month, people start trickling by a lot more because, how Oh, it's a difficult answer, but it kind of varies from time to time. They have more customers from the beginning of the month, and it starts trickling down to the end of the month. I don't have a definite answer for you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Elena. I have a question on a personal level. I'm wondering what grade in school you are and if you're planning to pursue journalism at a particular college or university.
I'm a senior, so I'm going to graduate soon. As for
Congratulations.
Thank you. Pursuing journalism, I find writing articles really cool because it's a different form of that, of not journalism, a different form of writing that, you know, that is different from fiction, because I love fiction. I love writing fiction, but writing nonfiction is also pretty interesting as well. For going into it in college, I'm not going into it for college. I'm going to probably go into teaching or psychology, but maybe the occasional article or two would get published somewhere because I want to keep doing it.
Well, that's fantastic. And Elena, we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And thank you, Molly and Elena, for presenting to us today. Our Westwood Village Rotary Club will be making a donation to the Polio Plus Foundation in your name. And we really appreciate, Doug, you joining us as well. And I just want to thank everyone. Ed, past president, I didn't get to greet you earlier when you joined us, but thank you, Bill Edwards, and all of our esteemed members who continue to come to our club. Hi, Adele. And thank you, Jim Crane, for the weekly invocation and pledge wrangler that you are. And I am going to share my screen here to say next week, that's Molly. So, why, there we go. We're going to have Dr. Bazad Imad come and speak to us, and our past president, Chris Bradford, will be presiding. So until then, you're welcome to stay and chat for a little bit because I know it's sometimes the only social interaction we get, but I want to officially thank you and close this meeting.
Thank you.
Wish you all a safe Memorial Day weekend, and I want to thank all our veterans and all our essential workers, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you, everyone.
I like the cartoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
À bientôt. À bientôt.
À bientôt. À la prochaine.
Bye.
See you later. See you later.